Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to give just a minute for the attendees to join. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining the Walk Cares Fund team and our guest panel for a webinar on getting help with hearing loss. For those of you who aren't familiar, Walk Cares is the state's new long-term care insurance program for workers. And this webinar series, Walk Cares Conversations, is designed to give you a high-level overview of a topic that's in some way related to caregiving or aging. Then we'll also have a brief overview of the Walk Cares Fund. And we're going to start with some introductions. My name is Kristen Mackey. I'm the Community Relations and Outreach Program Manager for Walk Cares. And I'm going to go around to our panel now and have each of them introduce themselves briefly. Becky, would you like to go first?
Sure. My name is Becky Montgomery. I am hard of hearing. I have low vision, and I'm an older white woman with graying hair, and I wear glasses. I'm with Hearing Loss Association. I should have probably said that first.
Thank you. And Sherry.
Hello, everyone. I am Sherry Pirazzoli, and I am the president of the Hearing Loss Association of America, Washington State. And today I am wearing a blue shirt. I am a white woman wearing glasses, hearing aids, and I am of retirement age, and I have brown hair. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Pearl.
Yes, hello.
I'm
Hi.
Burl Ross, and I'm a deaf person. I work in the Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing as a sign language interpreter contract manager. Hi.
Thank you. And Elizabeth.
Yes, I'm Elizabeth Luttrell, and I work for the Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and I'm the temporary program manager, white woman with light brown hair, short hair, glasses, a black shirt on, and a black background. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. So we are going to start with some remarks from our panel members. If you have questions that come up before we get to the audience Q&A section, you're welcome to go ahead and enter them using the Q&A button on your screen, and the panel will answer those later in the webinar. If you are interested in getting a copy of the slides or would like to watch the recording of this webinar later, those will both be posted on our website at wcaresfund.wa.gov/webinars. And with that, I will hand it over to Becky.
I am unmuted. I'm just quiet. Sorry. Can someone display my slides?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the slides were sharing this entire time, and it looks like they're not. 1 second.
Oh, no.
There we go. All right. Sorry about that.
Well, as you can see from the label here, Sherry and I are here representing the Hearing Loss Association of Washington State. Hearing Loss Association is we have no we're just an organization. We're a club that got together to help people help each other through the trials and tribulations of hearing loss. And we're going to divide our presentation into 2 segments. I'm going to talk first and focus on things that are some of the problems that we have with hearing loss. And then Sherry's going to tell you about the Hearing Loss Association. That's quick and dirty. And can you change slide? Hearing loss is very common around the world. In the United States alone, we have almost 73 million people who have, and about 1.5 million people in Washington alone. You might be surprised at the scale of that. But what's true, I mean, why it's true that hearing loss is invisible. And there's absolutely no reason at all why you would be able to be aware of somebody next to you with hearing loss. So it's twice as common as cancer and diabetes, and it affects the entire range of humans from birth to death. And then it's slightly more prevalent among men than women, but only slightly. Could you change slides? That said about hearing loss, it has it's pretty dramatically more prevalent as we age. I'm showing a slide that pictures that trend. It shows the number of people in each age group represented by a vertical orange bar. And you might notice that on the left-hand side, you can barely see the bar that represents people in their 20s. Whereas the bar that represents people in their 80s occupies a good deal more than half the page. In the 80s, for the people in their 80s, there's about roughly 2/3 of the people who are 80 years or older have hearing loss. Hearing loss that's considered disabling, actually. And you might also notice that these bars are shaded from dark at the bottom to a lighter orange at the top, and that represents the degree of hearing loss. You have severe hearing loss, severe and profound at the bottom is the darkest orange. That is the category that I'm in, and we share the joy of not being able to hear chainsaws. Which I'm grateful for, because I don't remember that being one of my favorite sounds in the world. I can hear a chainsaw if it's within 6 feet. So that's not total. On the top, where you have people who have mild to moderate hearing loss, a way to think about that degree of hearing loss is that those would be people who miss some of the conversation and might have a difficult time sitting around understanding everybody if they're sitting around a table full of people, and they would miss a lot of words. One of the contributors to the knowledge base of hearing loss is a woman named Sherry Ebert, who says it's kind of like playing Wheel of Fortune with none of the letters filled in there. Change slide, please. Most hearing loss can be treated, and that usually means that you get a hearing aid. Today's hearing aids are absolute marvels of technology, but they also can be expensive. A pair can cost between $1,000 and $7,000, depending on the degree of hearing loss and the number of what people think of as features that would be added to the hearing aids, and they need to be replaced somewhere between every 3 and 7 years. Most and insurance coverage is spotty, I guess is one way to put it. We're lucky in Washington State to have a proactive legislature that wants to change this for us. But in the meantime, one of the big segments of the population that's heavily impacted by hearing loss that the state legislature can't affect is older people, because Medicare doesn't cover hearing aids at all. There is some coverage with the new Medicare Advantage plans, but one would have to be a very wise and careful shopper to take good advantage of these things. When the legislature started acting on this with the idea of making sure everybody who was in their jurisdiction was able to get hearing aids, they started with Apple Health in order to make sure that children were covered. And today, everybody who has Medicaid in Washington is eligible for hearing aids. And this calendar year, they were able to increment up the number of people who are able to get hearing aids to another significant part of that, so that the total of people who are covered in Washington State right now is about 1 million. But the fact that hearing aids have to be replaced every couple of years is a very scary thing for people who are parents, for one thing, because their kids grow and they have to be replaced sometimes more often than that because they no longer physically fit the kid's head. But it's also a little scary for senior citizens who are on tightly fixed incomes and for whom Medicare doesn't cover any of the cost. But in general, we're very lucky to live in Washington because of that. So change slide, please. The fact that the hearing insurance coverage is most unpredictable for senior citizens is exacerbated by the fact that hearing loss is linked to health issues that primarily appear when you are a senior citizen, or they appear most risky when you are a senior citizen. The exception to that is social isolation, which is absolutely a problem at any age for people with hearing loss, because you can't often participate in conversations without a lot of effort. And so it begins, social isolation begins as soon as you have any hearing loss. That is exacerbated by other problems of age. I see that we're changing interpreters, so I'm going to pause here and sorry, that was an awkward time to break. But I guess I should just, rather than leave you with an empty space here, have we got somebody? Social isolation for older people is a pretty serious health risk, because right along with social isolation has a much higher mortality rate. then you might be, so it is, and it's also implied with, it leads to depression and anxiety and a whole slew of related problems. But the most scary of them is that you have a higher mortality risk if you're isolated. And cognitive decline, I think, needs a hesitation. It's true that for people who are at high risk, cognitive decline is much more prevalent and much faster for people who have hearing loss. In fact, people with moderate to severe hearing loss, or excuse me, severe to profound hearing loss, are 5 times more often at risk for cognitive decline that accumulates faster. And so it's a little, and then what are the extra risks? Well, the extra risks are those that are also associated with dementia. You know, there are risks of heart disease, risks of vascular problems, risks of stroke, diabetes, and other chronic health issues. People who have none of these chronic issues experience cognitive decline at a not exceptional or extraordinary rate in that. So, and I'm going to I kind of bounce back and forth across this page. The risk of falling is known to be a particularly dangerous thing for older people because older people often have very fragile bones, and falling can be really dangerous in that way. It's thought that it might be that people with hearing loss are particularly at risk because the hearing and balance systems are co-located in the brain. So there is conjecture that perhaps that's a factor in the increased risk for falling in people with hearing loss. But as far as I could find, there doesn't seem that there's definitive research that says absolutely yes, we have this one-to-one correspondence. If you have hearing loss, you're going to fall down. But the good news is that the state of Washington has, in the Department of Health, has pulled out all the stops in establishing training programs around the state to help people protect themselves from the risk of falling. For example, here, I live in Snohomish County, and in Snohomish County, there's a program that's sponsored by the Department of Health that is from the Netherlands, no less. And in the Netherlands, the research has established that this program, if it teaches people to be, if these people adhere to these principles, they're 35% less likely to fall. And these are primarily standard physical therapy exercises, like stand up and sit down and walk a straight line and things like that. It's not hard to do. And so I'm really thrilled that the Washington State Department of Health has jumped on the bandwagon with this. So now I've kind of run through some of the problems that can occur with this, and this seems like a really good time to say, okay, you've got these problems, you have a common health issue that makes the chainsaws arrive more closely every day, and you have health risks that are associated with it, and you'd like to figure out what you can do about that, which is HLAA. And with that, I'm going to segue and introduce you to our president, Sherry Perazzoli.
Thank you, Becky. Next slide, please. One more. Okay, great. Okay. So as I said earlier, I am Sherry Pirazzoli, and I wear very many hats for the hearing loss community. I am honored to be serving as president of the Hearing Loss Association of America, Washington State. And, that's really a mouthful. So we like to abbreviate that as saying HLAA Washington. I also serve on the National Board of Directors. And as both state and national levels, HLAA focuses on improving the lives of people with hearing loss through information, education, support, and advocacy. I'm very pleased to be here today with Becky and with Burl and Elizabeth representing the Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing. So thank you very much. Next slide, please. So our programs, our HLAA Washington programs, we provide information, advocacy, support, and outreach. And I'll start with advocacy. This is a brief overview of our programs and services. And really what I hope that you will take away today is that HLAA Washington is a local resource to help you better communicate with and to help the communities that you serve. Under each of our focus areas, we have programs that support people with hearing loss and improve communication access across our state. Advocacy. We are Washington State's voice for consumers with hearing loss. We advocate for legislation and policy simply to make the world a better place for those of us living with hearing loss. Support. Oftentimes people feel very alone when they get a diagnosis of hearing loss. Finding a community of peers who understand what you're facing and who share similar struggles can be invaluable towards decreasing isolation and depression. And the good news is that it's possible to not only live well with hearing loss, but to also thrive. Information. As Becky mentioned, hearing loss is invisible. It's very much misunderstood, and it is a 24/7 disability. A hearing loss diagnosis doesn't come with a roadmap. We provide education and resources to help individuals, families, and those you serve to navigate life with diminished hearing. Outreach. It's often said that HLAA is the best kept secret. We do outreach to raise awareness and to help educate our communities. Next slide, please. Advocacy and legislative and community. We advocate for many kinds of accommodations. People with hearing loss have different needs depending on the severity of their loss. As Becky mentioned, there is a wide spectrum of hearing loss, and it is usually categorized as mild, moderate, severe, and profound. Now, in pinpointing the population, people who identify as hard of hearing have these things in common. Have some degree of hearing loss from mild to profound. Vary in onset from infancy to late adulthood. Don't know sign language. Get some benefit from hearing aids and assistive listening devices. Are not generally part of the culturally deaf community. And navigate the hearing world at work and in personal relationships. Therefore, we advocate for a multifaceted approach to hearing accommodations. ASL interpretation alone works well for people who use this language, but If an assistive listening system like hearing loops and live captions are added to the mix, then most people with hearing loss can hear and understand what is being communicated. Now, as communication are we changing? Okay. Okay, so as communication is essential to all of us, we work collaboratively to increase communication access for people across the entire hearing loss spectrum. Next slide, please. Support. Welcome to the hearing loss community. Our online HOPE meetings are the first Wednesday of each month and are open to all. HOPE is the acronym for hearing other people's experiences. And good news, tomorrow afternoon at 4 p.m., our August meeting is tomorrow, so please join us. We also offer in-person groups in Renton, Bellingham, and Lacey. So individuals can find family and individual support, help with life adjustments, communication tips, and accommodation support. Next slide, please. Information, what you need to know. Our website is a wealth of information. You'll find valuable tips, education, and resources to help you and those you serve. Hearing Aids 101, financial resources, and state resources, such as the Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing, are several of our most popular pages. Subscribe to our monthly newsletter. Our August edition was just released this morning and included new news and information on captioning legislation, Amtrak hearing loops, and more. And during the legislative session, we have 2 newsletters each month. You'll receive advocacy alerts so you can take action on important legislation that matters to people with hearing loss and the people as we age. Next slide, please. Outreach. We do a great deal of outreach, and our programs include outreach to communities and outreach to organizations interested in serving people with hearing loss and in improving communication access. Hearing loss also impacts your ability to help the people you serve. Understanding the hearing loss experience and what people with hearing loss need can go a long way in helping you be more successful. HLAA Washington is here to help. We provide presentations that can help educate organizations about hearing loss. You can learn to recognize the signs of hearing loss, use technologies beyond hearing aids to help people hear better, and learn how to help individuals and families get the hearing help they need. Just being hearing loss aware and friendly is a huge step. One of the important things you can do is to simply talk about hearing loss. This helps normalize hearing loss and helps people get comfortable talking about their own hearing loss and asking for accommodations. One thing you can do is to proactively model communication access and support, just like you see at today's webinar with our ASL interpreters and our live captions. Next slide, please. Our HLA website is a goldmine of information, and you will see we provide education. We've often done presentations for the state ombudsmen and hospitals in different groups, Rotaries. And as I said earlier, we've done a lot of legislation for hearing-friendly laws. And then we work with communities, many theaters and hospitals and entertainment venues to help them provide information and community outreach for others. Next slide, please. Please reach out to us and look at our website. There's a goldmine of information. We have information on hearing aids, assistive technologies, working with professional providers, and personal hearing loss journeys. Please consider subscribing to our newsletter. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Burl.
Perfect. Hello. And thank you, Sherry. It's always a pleasure to hear your presentations. You have so much to share and so many resources. It's awesome. I'm going to speak a little bit about a different topic. I'm going to talk about my own personal experience and my journey with hearing loss and becoming deaf and getting engaged with the deaf community. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background. Well, first, let me back up just a little bit. I was born deaf. I have a birth defect. I have 2 ear canals, and it's really obvious if you look that there's something wrong. So you can look and see that obviously, but I didn't have the label of hearing loss until I was 4. And how that happened was there was a thunderstorm, and my parents were really puzzled because I wasn't reacting. That time we lived in Bend, Oregon, a very isolated area. And we went all the way to Seattle to Swedish Hospital, and they did some analysis and found out that I did have a moderate hearing loss. But it didn't matter. I had already picked up language, and so they felt like I didn't need any services or resources or anything. They thought, just leave it alone. Now, that was before the 70s. Before cochlear implants became popular. That happened more in the 80s. And so I grew up without hearing loss or any kind of resources. I just did what I could, and I went to a public school. I did some lip reading, and I got by. And I was expected to behave as if I was a child who could hear, even though I was missing a lot of information. And I would be sent to the principal's office for what? Not paying attention. Let's see. I also have 2 brothers, and both of them have hearing loss. One is hard of hearing, and one is more profoundly deaf. And of the 2 of them, both of them choose to function as hard of hearing people. Like what Sherry mentioned, they prefer to use spoken English and do speech reading and use technology. I, on the other hand, moved into using sign language. The thing is, when you talk about how I got into the deaf community, really, it's totally interesting, and it's a little off topic, but the story is that I was in Elma going to school, and my neighbor, who happened to be blind, not deaf, blind, her junior, senior year, she had a trip to WSB. That's the School for the Blind in Vancouver. And it's a transition to independence program. And my teacher's aide at that time asked if I wanted to go, if I wanted to join them to go to the School for the Blind. And I said, sure, a field trip, why not? Yeah, I'll go. So I went to the blind school. And when we got to the School for the Blind, they said, hey, do you know about the School for the Deaf? It's just down the road. So the 3 of us got finished with the School for the Blind, and then we took advantage of the opportunity to go to the School for the Deaf. And when I went into the School for the Deaf and everyone was signing, I knew it was my place. And I wanted to transfer to that school. At that time, I was in the 10th grade. It took a whole year of going back and forth to get into that school, but I was finally transferred to the School for the Deaf. They thought I was doing just fine in public school. And I thought, fine in public school. No, I was barely getting by and being sent to the principal's office for not paying attention. I'm trying to lip read and all of that. So they did transfer me, let's see, the beginning of my junior year, I transferred in. And I acquired ASL while I was there at the School for the Deaf. Prior to that, I didn't really have any sign language skills. When I went in, I learned sign language from that community, and I graduated and went to Gallaudet University and graduated from there, and so forth. So anyway, what I've learned during my journey growing up is that trying to lip read and make do means that you don't really have the opportunity to process as well. I mean, you're doing a lot of guessing with lip reading, and it's the mental processing required is exhausting. When I went to USL, when I moved to using ASL, I was never exhausted. I could sign all day and just keep going. And my mental processing was great and I had more energy. And so that was this sharp contrast for me. And I think that the fatigue from processing in that kind of communication that hard of hearing people use is part of the reason why there's so much exhaustion around that effort. And so, when you're talking about people like myself, I do have a moderate hearing loss and I have a hearing aid. It doesn't really work. It's not effective. I struggle trying to use it. It's like the whole world just becomes loud and it's very hard to concentrate. And I can only do it in short stints. And it's tiring. And it makes me feel like I don't want to really socialize with people and I become more isolated with that. But with ASL, oh my gosh, I'm participating, I'm communicating with people, and I can keep going in that socialization, no problem. So it was an interesting choice. Now, I would like to put out there during the presentation that Becky was doing, talking about the effects generally of hearing loss. It's true that we do have all kinds of different choices and resources. There are hearing aids and cochlear implants, and also there is ASL. And there is a community around the use of ASL, and all people are welcome to join that community. And learning sign language, sometimes when you have limited resources, like Becky mentioned, a hearing aid might be available for children, and it might be available for children when they're growing up. But later, it may be very difficult without sign language. And so there are options. Let me look at my notes here. Let's see. Oh, in my journey, I did get involved very much into sign language. And I am still involved with language advocacy. And so I work with the sign language interpreter contract for the state of Washington. We help a variety of Washington agencies, state agencies provide equal access and so forth around sign language interpreting. And we continue to get back to getting the message out and educating people about the needs folks have. So if you're listening today and you'd like to learn more about the sign language interpreter contract, or like to find out more about how those things could benefit you, please feel free to contact ODHH. We have a variety of resources. So thank you so much. Yeah, I'll turn it over to Elizabeth.
Hi, this is Elizabeth speaking here, and this is my name sign. And so I work for the ODHH, the Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and I've watched what's been talked about today with the personal experiences. Personal experiences make for great, powerful advocates, not only for themselves, but also for the community. They're able to spread out information and get the information out there to other people, captioning, whatnot. So the Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing, they are a key part of providing communication access. Communication access includes how people communicate daily, just in their daily life, one-on-one, also on the phone, and through various means of communication devices and whatnot. And so hopefully, as you watch today and listen today, you'll hear about those different technologies and the different ways and how to use this information to benefit for yourself and benefit your coworkers and community and the parents and people that you know. Next slide, please. I want to make sure that you're aware that the ADA, Americans with Disability Act, was established in the early 1990s, and the federal plus state level governments have been, have been asking for communication access, and they had established relay services, and relay services were set up through the FCC, through Federal Communication Commission. And they set the mandate that every 50 of all the 50 states, everyone needs to have a relay service provided, which means that it's not it's for not like walking relay, but for phone relay. And what that's for is that they could, a deaf person, deaf blind person, hard of hearing person, someone with speech disabilities can use relay to make phone calls. However, the general public, if someone was to call a deaf blind person, a person with a speech and hearing disability, they could call back and forth, so that it provides some level of equal access for communication. And our Washington relay here, we contract with Hamilton Relay, and their providers, relay providers. They have a call center, and that's who our contract is for this state. And people that use that calling system to call out to deaf blind people, hard of hearing, whatnot, that communicate, those services are free, provided free to the individuals. And we want people to understand, how to use relay services properly. And to be able to do that, we have several different kinds of relay services to provide a variety of different services. Next slide, please. So today you can see, as you look through that, there's quite the list there. We're trying to meet the different needs that are out there to make phone calls. So we have TTYs, and that's more of a traditional, old school sort of method of making phone calls. Basically, it looks like a small keyboard typewriter kind of a thing, and there's a text at the top, and your phone, a traditional headset sits on top of it. And you can make a call to a relay operator. The relay operator would receive that text and would then voice out that text to the hearing person, and vice versa, in reverse. Voice carryover is where the person has hearing loss, so they can't hear. However, they are still able to speak. So voice carryover is basically that they would speak into the phone. The person, the individual with disability, calls in, and that it goes to the call center, and they receive it as a text. Hearing a carryover, so it's basically the other way around. So the person voices, or maybe they have a speech disability. They can hear just fine, but they can't speak. They can't produce a spoken language. So the person, they listen and they respond, and they basically type out their response in lieu of voice. For deaf blind, there's deaf blind relay services where the deaf blind person will use Braille, text-based Braille, and they communicate that same way as we've talked about with the other different ways. And then you've got speech-to-speech relay. The person may, for example, they might have maybe a severe form of a stutter, or maybe they've had some other speech disability, and they've struggled. It causes things to be too long, protracts out the conversation. So they have another person that receives the call, and they say, "Oh, please be patient." Sometimes what happens is if they can't produce a conversation immediately, the receiver of the phone call hangs up because they think that it's just taking too long, and they just need to be able to be warned, "Hey, there's someone's going to be speaking here just a second," and then that way the conversation goes smoothly. Thank you to the interpreter for summarizing that, or getting all of my my information out. So you have another service for hard of hearing people who they have some hearing loss, but they speak well enough, and they have a phone that basically looks like a standard phone, and there's a caption so that they can read the other person's response. So as they're talking on the phone, they can see it just comes across the screen, and they're able to see what the person's doing in text. And then there's voice for people, just the general public people. Just if you call, a person can use just regular service to call in. Relay services, there are two different types. There's English captioning and Spanish captioning available. So now there's a new technology that we sort of a new series of offerings that we have called remote conference captioning. And that's intended for virtual environments. So for example, you're in a meeting or a training and so on and so forth, and you're on a Zoom meeting or in a Teams meeting or a GoToWebinar. It's not for in-person meetings. This is specifically for virtual environments. And that's a feature that's available through a relay service. The person who's responsible for running that program is Steve Peck. And while we have, you can, while we've got the slide up, you can actually take notes. If you need to email and get more information, I'll leave this slide for a moment so you can set up a specific presentation on any one of these different services. Thank you. We'll go to the next slide, please. And as I just mentioned too, just barely talked about, is that what we envision Relay to look like is that you basically have a person using what's a TTY. So this is to sort of visually show what we were talking about before. And there's a little text box there that shows, and the person makes the phone call, and there's goes to a third party. The relay operator then receives the message in text form, reads it, and then voices it to the recipient of the phone call. Then the person can respond back verbally to the relay operator. The relay operator then types out the text to the person that's generating the call. This sort of just envisions, this would apply to all the different relay services. This is a sort of a universal picture that works for all those. Next slide, please. So relay services aside, there's other technologies that are available. There's a program called ACT, Assistive Communication Technology, and there's lots of different offerings there, equipment, technology, things that are available to help to support people with hearing loss, to improve access to webinars and lectures and whatnot. So hearing aids, they do have T-coil. There's a feature called a T-coil, and there's Bluetooth, obviously. So those two features will help the person with a hearing aid or with a cochlear implant to be able to link up to their sound system if the sound system is enabled with Bluetooth or T-coil. If anyone has a hearing aid or a cochlear implant, or they have hearing loss, they can use, if they don't have any of those things, they can use a headphones sort of system that hooks up to the FM system. And basically, we educate the community and state agencies and other members of the public about what kinds of equipment are out there and available. For nonprofits also, to be able to have more access to movie theaters and to different events that are in the community. And ACT can be used for a variety of things. As you can see what it says here, it talks about conferences, courthouses, large rooms. There's lots of different purposes that it can be used for. ACT, they have, lots of there's sort of a repository of information for individuals. And ACT, at ACT, we do work closely with HLASAA, and Steve Peck, who's currently responsible for that program. he sits down with people and he tests out equipment, gives feedback, positive, negative, whatever is needed, to be able to help to implement services and technologies in the different institutions throughout the state. Next slide, please. Oh, I need to look at my notes off screen. Hold on 1 second. Yeah. So as mentioned, the telecoil, or as they call it, T-coil for short, and Bluetooth technologies, the majority are available on in most hearing aids and cochlear implants, and so they've got the more modern digital hearing aids and hearing implants. What's great about that is that it can actually be connected to your mobile device, to your computer, tablets, and whatnot, and that can be used to hear what's going on the mobile device, which is great. It's a great technology. Portable loop system is another system that can be set up so that if you go to maybe a conference, or the conference person can set that up and set in what's called a loop. And as you come in, the speaker that's speaking makes it so that everybody in the room can hear and have equal hearing access. It's also good for people that have telecoils as well, and like I said, we talked about this is good for Bluetooth. But the FM system, again, it can be hooked up directly to a hearing aid or to a hearing implant device. If they don't have either of those two things, they've got headphones as an alternate. FM system include a microphone for the presenter to use, and the person will have the recipient will have a receiver, a small receiver that they keep on their person. And all those technologies, you'll see a picture of the different alternatives as well coming up here pretty soon. Next slide, please. So these are those systems I was talking about, and there's the portable loop as well. In the picture, you can see there. It's basically a briefcase with a private FM system. You have 10 or 12 units that are in there, so that if you have a deaf and hard of hearing person comes into a conference, you can pull open that little suitcase and hand them, and they can be ready to access the presentation at the conclusion. They need to be put back in, and it can be clipped to the person, and they can have all these different technologies too, because obviously not one technology is going to be a sort of a one size fits all kind of a situation. So these are different, sort of an array of different services available. And ACT and Washington Relay is under Steve Peck. All those services are available through, and to the ACT, he's the program manager there. So if you have any questions, or if you are working in an environment where you have for yourself, or you have a coworker that might benefit from these types of communication devices, you can reach out to Mr. Peck, and you can so you can get different access to those meetings. This is open to the public. If you're a member of the public, you have want information, you can always reach out to Sherry or Becky from WLAA, and Steve at ODHH. There's an advocacy and technology, information technology as well. Hey, thank you very much. I'll go ahead and pass it on to the next presenter.
Thank you. Okay. So we only have a few minutes left in the webinar, but I do want to provide just a very brief overview of WalkCares, and then I will direct folks to these slides on the website and to the rest of the website for any additional information that you might need on the program. But just to give you a very brief overview, WalkCares is a new long-term care program for Washington workers. It's an earned benefit, which means you contribute for a certain number of years in order to qualify for benefits. And it's entirely self-funded by worker contributions, which go into a dedicated trust fund that's used only for this program. It works essentially like an insurance program. So workers contribute 0.58% of each paycheck to Walk Cares. And you can see here what this looks like for the typical worker who makes just over $50,000 a year and would contribute $291 each year, or about $24 a month. You only contribute to Walk Cares while you're working. Contributions stop when you retire or if you become unemployed, and everyone is covered at the same rate regardless of pre-existing conditions. When it comes time to claim your benefits, there are no copays or deductibles, and you don't need to pay upfront for services and file claims later. Instead, we connect you with contracted providers for the services that you want and pay those providers directly. Contributions to the program began in July 2023, and benefits will become available in July 2026. And I am actually going to leave it at that. There's some more information available on our website, including this, which is our newest piece of information that you can now take your Walk Cares benefits with you if you leave the state. And I want to make sure that we have time to get to the couple of questions that are in the Q&A. We do have one person asking about how hearing loss pertains to Walk Cares, since hearing is not one of the activities of daily living that qualify you for benefits. And essentially the answer to that is that hearing loss alone will not qualify someone for Walk Cares. We look at whether someone is able to complete, like you said, activities of daily living, like eating, bathing, moving around the house, taking medications, and that kind of thing without help. And so it is likely that Walk Cares beneficiaries with hearing loss will be either people with age-related hearing loss or older deaf people who also have other issues that cause them to need help with those activities of daily living. And then I also have somebody in the Q&A asking, I heard somewhere that Biden would be approving legislation for hearing and vision services under Medicare. Do you know anything about this legislation? Is anyone on the panel able to answer that one?
This is Sherry, and I'll take a stab at that one. So in the Build Back America plan that passed back last November, we did have insurance or some Medicare coverage for individuals with moderately severe hearing loss. Unfortunately, as that bill progressed through the Senate, that benefit was cut. So, but we have it's always a new year, a new legislature, a new opportunity. So we're continuing that fight to get Medicare included, hearing health care included in Medicare. And I just did want to just let people know that a number of Medicare Advantage plans do provide some sort of hearing benefit. They vary widely. Sometimes you can't, choose your own provider, or they have they have limitations, but we are making some inroads there. So that's something that we always encourage folks to check out. And again, we have a lot of information on affording hearing aids on our HLAA Washington website. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. Okay. And that brings us to the end of our time today. So please do check out our website at walkcaresfund.wa.gov/webinars for the rest of the slides and to learn more about the Walk Cares Fund. If you have questions about the program, please feel free to reach out to us by email or phone. We'd be happy to answer those. Thank you all for joining us and have a wonderful afternoon.